They told me you were experienced in harsh waters.
James said as he pointed out the pearls of sweat that had formed on my forehead. No, I do. I replied moments before hurling the remnants of a less than appetizing lunch off the side of our ship.
It's just that you look a bit green around the gills.
We just met a few hours ago, and I had been airlifted to the USS Orion, a sea lift handling abyssal transport capsules for a classified project conducted by the United States Navy. I guess they failed to mention that I'm much better underwater, in submarines, I shot back. Considering the circumstances, his casual demeanor left an uncomfortable atmosphere among the workers. They all knew what my visit entailed, but just like myself, they were scant with information. All I knew was that there might be a contagious infection at the bottom of the ocean, and my job was to either disprove it or confine the entire crew aboard the station. As soon as we were positioned securely atop the Tonga Trench, we were rushed into the transport capsule, a minuscule vertical submarine designed simply to take us to the base of the ocean floor. 20,000 feet below us. Talos. I entered the sub feeling excited while also dreading the return to the deep blue. It had been 10 years since serving as a hospital corpsman, one of the few actually stationed aboard a submarine. Over the years, I had clearly lost my natural sense I once had for the ocean. Yet, I longed desperately for it.
Whenever you're ready, Doc.
One of the crew members said, impatiently waiting to drop us into the abyss. I raised my thumb. Ready as I'll ever be. Go ahead. "10 feet, the twilight zone. The impact of the ocean lightly shook the capsule. As we submerged, my nausea quickly diminished, and a sense of peace washed over my mind. I was back. Outside a window, a few curious fish accompanied our journey downwards. Various sea life attracted by the cargo ship following us to see us off. James piloted the miniature sub, having done this trip 1,000 times before. It wasn't anything new to him. Myself, I'd never been below 2,000 feet, and never had I been able to look through a window and admire the mostly unexplored blue world. As we sank deeper towards the abyss, the last stray rays of sunshine vanished. We had left the realm of sunshine and mankind, all in favor for the domain of darkness.
First time in the abyss, right?
James asked after a long bout of silence. Yeah, served aboard a submarine for a few years, but they never go very deep. This is something else. He smiled at me.
Well, you're in for a treat then. We're going all the way down. Talos sits right at the edge of the trench. Nothing quite like it.
Any sea life once curious about our sub had long since retreated towards the brighter areas. The rapidly increasing pressure had proven too hostile to most. But some resilient little creatures had found a way to thrive in places once thought to be lifeless. The miracles of the ocean. Within an hour, we had reached a depth of 10,000 feet. Beyond the 15-inch glass plane separating us from certain death lied nothing but everlasting darkness. For all we knew, the two of us could have been all that existed in that void, if not for the sound of the outer hull settling under the pressure, a constant reminder about the vastness of the ocean. To distract myself from the unsettling creaking sound, I asked James about the only thing that I can think about. Why don't you tell me more about what happened down there? James had acted casual that far, but my question quickly changed his nonchalant expression to a frown.
They briefed you on the surface, didn't they?
Of course, but...
Then I'll have to do.
He said firmly. 13,100 feet. The abyssal zone. The world outside hypnotized me, staring so far into nothing, knowing that there could be a full world only a few feet before you was bizarre. I'd never experienced true darkness until that day. And to think, A good portion of Earth's life had existed within it for millions of years. Terrified me. When I served aboard the USS Cetacea, my captain explained why they don't put windows on submarines. He told stories about shipmates going crazy after years at sea. The isolation, or the distance from the mainland, never bothered any of them. He firmly believed that staring into the ocean and pondering its secrets was what drove men from their sanity. And to combat this, they never put windows on their vessels. I thought it was clearly a tale he made up. Seeing what truly lies beyond the surface brought back these memories. Maybe he was right after all. My sinister thoughts were interrupted by a dim light appearing in the distance. A red dot dancing blissfully up and down, getting closer to our little sub. It was a jellyfish.
Would you look at that?
James said as he pointed at the little creature. So fragile, yet defying the deep sea pressure. Another light joined in, then a few more. And before long, a symphony of pulsating crimson lights formed all around our capsule, welcoming us with its warmth of 1,000 stars, making up their own little galaxy, thousands of feet below the surface. It was the most magnificent thing I had ever seen. A bloom of jellyfish happily existing in such hostile conditions, I couldn't help but feel impressed.
They're called Atolla jellyfish. They don't usually venture this far down, but there's something about this place that seems to attract them. I usually see a few on my journeys down here, but never anything like this.
I just nodded in response, too mesmerized by the sight to notice what he had said. But as quickly as they had appeared, they vanished, once more leaving us in absolute darkness.
Listen, Doc. Sorry about the outburst earlier.
I turned towards him, turning my back to the darkness for the first time. It made me feel vulnerable.
You gotta understand, this ain't something we usually deal with. And Mike, well, I've known him most of my life.
I know how much this sucks. Believe me. I'm just trying to get as much info as possible for all our sakes.
Yeah, well, there's nothing I can tell you anyway. The airlock has been on lockdown for the past 2 days, and we're under strict orders not to open it until you deem it safe to do so.
I didn't ask any further questions. I dealt with contagions ever since leaving the Navy, and 90% of the time, they were simple over-exaggerations. 19,700 feet, the ocean basin. For the first time since we left the ship, the radio came to life, emitting a static sound that slowly took the shape of a man's voice.
James, can you hear me?
Loud and clear, Captain. I got our man from the CDC with me as well. We're just about ready to dock.
Great. The crew is getting impatient. The radio is docked at Section A. Don't...
Welcome to the Abyssal Zone. The radio has been acting strange lately. Imagine giving us a state-of-the-art station, but comms from the last millennium.
Through the window, we could see a massive dome lit up by hundreds of lights. 3 paths stretched from its center, each lit up by different colors, marking sectors A, B, and C. There was something else lit up by the station's light. At first, just obscured figures leaving shadows in the sand. But as we got closer, I realized they were fish. Hundreds, if not thousands, of dead sea creatures littering the ocean's bed. Their corpses mangled from the intense pressure. Christ, what the hell is up with the fish?
Same as the Atolla. Something attracts them down here. And they swim till their bodies break under the pressure. Then they sink.
What could possibly do that?
There are a few theories, but from what we can tell, it's the sound that we periodically hear from the trench.
The docking process itself took quite some time. The outer hull had changed ever so slightly due to the high pressure, just enough so that fitting into the station proved a challenge. As the doors finally opened, I stumbled outside of the capsule, greeted by 3 of the crew members aboard.
You're the doctor, right?
The oldest of them asked. That's correct, as he reached out his hand to introduce himself.
The name's Robert Lewis. I'm the captain assigned to Talos. Thank you for coming this far. I know it's not the most pleasant journey.
He seemed polite enough, though clearly sleep-deprived, with bloodshot eyes and greasy hair.
This is Jennifer Burke, one of our biologists. And that's Henry Gale, our technician.
They both shook my hand, neither making eye contact as they did.
Hey, Cap, where's Abby?
Still at Section B. She's not doing too well, as I'm sure you can understand.
James nodded.
Let's talk.
Robert said as he gestured for me to follow. The hallways were narrow, dimly lit up with lights that flickered and a constant creaking emitting from the walls. It looked disproportionate considering how large it had all seemed from the outside. And as a rather tall guy, I had to crouch down to keep my head from knocking into the ceiling.
I'm sorry about the grim mood. It's the first time we're dealing with something like this. I'm assuming they told you about the situation on the surface?
They did, but I have to admit, I'm a bit fuzzy on the details.
As are we. Mike put himself in lockdown as soon as he returned to the station, and we haven't had clearance to open it yet.
Mike, didn't give you any good reasons?
He never got the chance. He fell over dead the second he hit the button.
Robert led us to the central dome. In contrast to the hallways, it was a pleasant surprise. A large living space filled with furniture and personal effects. Had I not known any better, I could have believed we were still on the surface.
Mike discovered some microorganisms down in the trench. A new type of parasite, he said. He claimed they were able to withstand any amount of pressure, which isn't a surprise down here, but he also explained that they were completely unaffected by rapid changes in environment.
Did he believe it was contagious?
Seeing as he was our microbiologist, I can't really come up with another fathomable conclusion. Needless to say, we destroyed all the samples, but we still don't know why he put himself into lockdown. But that's not the strangest thing.
I waited patiently for him to continue, while he tried to form the words he clearly had trouble believing himself.
We lost him in the trench for 3 entire days. The tracking system failed and the comms went down. We did whatever we could, but it was futile. Even if we had found him, he only had enough oxygen for 10 hours. So, unfortunately, we presumed he had died. Then, out of nowhere, his tracker reappeared on our systems, showing that he was moving back up the Tonga elevator, and though he never responded to any of our attempts at contacting him, he was clearly alive.
How?
It's impossible, yet it happened. Once we let him onto the station, he simply locked it down and fell over dead on the ground.
Before Robert could continue, a technician walked into the office.
When you examine him, be careful not to damage the EPM suit. It's highly—
This is hardly the time, Henry.
Robert commanded, glaring at him.
I'm just saying, this is $1 billion project.
Why don't you go get the equipment for our doctor here?
Robert demanded, getting more agitated by the minute.
Look, Captain, if you would just let me go into the airlock, I could take all the necessary precautions.
Absolutely not. Do you think headquarters would have sent the damn CDC if they thought we could handle it? For Christ's sake, Henry, know your limits.
The technician left and quickly returned with a modified hazmat suit and some surgical supplies. We moved on towards Section B. Unlike the hallways we had traversed before, these were large and well lit up. As we arrived at the airlock, we found Abby standing before the glass doors, staring longingly at Mike's lifeless body.
Abby.
I know. It's time.
She responded as she turned around.
Oh, you're the doctor?
She asked, her eyes red and voice trembling.
You'll figure out what did this to him, won't you? I just don't understand.
Abby, why don't you come with me while they work? You don't need to see this.
As Robert led her back to the central dome, Henry started unpacking the cart of medical supplies, including isolation drapes and a hazmat suit.
All right, I'm going to guide you through this. No need to mess up a perfectly good EPM suit.
What does EPM mean anyways? I asked.
Exoskeletal pressure modulator.
Henry said as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. James and Jennifer helped me seal up the hazmat suit while Henry hung up the isolation drapes. I stepped through while Jennifer entered the code behind me to open the airlock. My ears popped as they sealed the door behind me. Both the drapes and airlock were transparent, meaning they could observe everything I did. In addition to a mounted camera on my shoulder for a closer view, displayed on a monitor on the other side. Just by the control panel, Mike lied, dead, wearing a massive black suit, looking more like a robotic piece of machinery than diver's gear. There were several cables and hooks hanging from the ceiling, and just turning him over was a massive task, as he weighed about a half-ton wearing the suit. His face was pale as a sheet, with streaks of blood pouring from every available orifice. The eyes were red from conjugal bleeding, completely ridding them of any white. "I'm ready," I said.
Alright, the first thing you'll need to do is to simply inspect the suit. Look for any breaches in the integrity. It shouldn't be possible, but in the unlikely event that something broke through, a self-healing mesh should have formed. It looks kind of gray.
I looked over every inch of his suit, from top to bottom.
There! His feet!
Sure enough, there was a patch of gray that stood out from the matte black metal covering the rest of him.
Something actually perforated his suit!
I got closer, giving them a better view on the monitor.
Clearly the puncture wasn't what killed him, though.
He added. I had to agree with that assessment. Any breach that had not sealed off within a nanosecond would have immediately crushed him. But it seemed that the mesh had replaced whatever penetrated the suit at the same time as it was removed.
Next, attach the cables to his shoulder. They're color-coded, so it should be easy enough.
I attached the cables as instructed, which caused the suit to light up and start unhinging. The front of the suit opened, revealing Mike's completely mangled body.
What the hell?
That's not pressure damage.
Mike's ribs had broken outwards, though they had not torn apart his flesh. His chest seemed to have expanded almost twice its normal size. I continued to remove his helmet, pulling it off his head. I looked into his eyes for a brief moment, baffled as to see what could have caused his internal organs to essentially explode. For the briefest moments, it seemed like his eyes moved to meet my gaze. Did you just see that? No one said a word. We all just stared at Mike, waiting for something to happen. His eyes moved again, darting in random directions as he started gargling, violently contracting his chest.
Oh God, he's still alive?
Jennifer asked. He opened his mouth, letting thousands of massive worms pour out onto the floor. They immediately crawled in every direction, up the walls onto the ceiling, desperately searching for a way out. Mike continued to spew out more slimy worms. His mouth tore open in the process, leaving his jaw completely unhinged before falling off. Once all the worms seemed to have exited his corpse, his chest tore open, revealing even larger worms. It quickly became apparent that all his organs had been consumed, replaced with the disgusting creatures. Some of them started to cling onto my suit, and I swatted them away in panic, and none of the others knew what to do. They could only stare at me flailing around. As the worms touched each other, their flesh temporarily fused, forming longer versions of themselves, growing in size and then breaking off again. They wrapped around my arms and legs. I begged for someone to help me, but what could they do?
Hang in there!
Henry yelled as he fumbled with the panel on the airlock. Within seconds, a few small taps emerged from the ceiling, spewing what I could only assume was liquid nitrogen. Whatever it was, the worms froze in place, freezing to the point where I could easily break them into tiny pieces. It only took a moment, but all the worms had been killed off, and though my suit had partially protected me from the cold, I collapsed, exhausted and shivering onto the ground. Get me the fuck out of here, I demanded, knowing full well they couldn't do that until I had dealt with the infestation. Robert had just returned in time to see what the commotion was about, and upon seeing what remained of Mike laying torn to pieces on the ground, he stopped in his tracks. After a minute of catching my breath, I got some sense back. With some morbid sense of humor and functioning on autopilot, I turned towards Henry. Sorry, But the suit isn't going to be salvaged. We're ejecting the whole fucking airlock as soon as I get out of here. Henry turned to Robert, pleading for him to make me reconsider, despite what we had all just witnessed. But Robert took my side. After removing the recording unit from the EPM suit, I packed the entire thing into an easily ejectable container, while making sure that no worms remained on my suit. All I took was a small sample of a frozen worm packed into a vacuum container. I exited the airlock and handed the sample over to Jennifer. She had prepared the previous parasites brought back by Mike, and I told her to get everything ready so that I could determine what we were dealing with. Robert started the procedure of ejecting the airlock's content, including what remained of Mike and the EPM suit. Henry, pouting the whole time. James hadn't moved an inch since the event. He turned sickly pale, as if he just realized the severity of the situation.
We have to tell him, Captain.
He said quietly after a few minutes. Tell me what? I asked while getting out of the hazmat suit. Robert took a deep breath, mulling over his options.
You're right.
Tell me what? I repeated.
The real reason we're stationed down here.
It was late at night when a group of friends and I were on our way home from a business party. I had to be a good boy and stay sober, getting them home safely. Drinking was never a thing for me anyway. I just enjoyed the networking and building of my small yet lucrative business. Most of the people in the car were passed out except for Ben, who had always had this weird not getting drunk effect. Or at least when he felt like it. Maybe it was a Ishvalan thing, something that was completely unique to them. Whatever it was, I was glad to not be the only one awake during the drive. The road was bare except for a few cars that passed by. The stars danced with the night sky, glowing with a majestic might. The car highlighted the trees' red surface, flattened leaves falling with smooth grace. Small animals wandered the road, creatures that I had never seen before, or ever since. Ben started to talk about people vanishing only to find them a few days later, completely dismembered and body parts littering the area. This always happened near the woods.
So, you think it's a serial killer out?
Ben asked, staring out into the night. I honestly don't know, but I hope they catch who or what is taking people. I replied, focused on the road, as deer started peeking their heads out. But they looked wrong. Their eyes were blood red and skin pale as a naked moon. I watched them, in case they chose to leap into the road. But they never did. That fact never made me calm. Ben played with a small cube-like device, something that roared with an arcane aura, another form of Ishvalan uniqueness. Their tech had always been strange and unworldly, like it had no place in the world of man.
There's a myriad of them out tonight.
Ben said, still playing with the object.
They look different. Unnatural.
He stopped as if he heard something from behind. Ben turned his head toward the back. His pupils widened, jaw dropping from with an indescribable awe. I looked at him for a moment, before those last words echoed across my mind.
There is a stranger in the back.
His words filled the air with a terrible dread. I pulled the car to the side of the road, never understood what drove me to do such a thing. I turned the blinkers on and looked toward the back seats. I saw no one. When I looked to make eye contact with Ben, he was gone. The passenger door was wide open. A slight breeze invited itself in. My friends woke from their dream. They started to ask me about Ben, and I couldn't answer them as tears fell down my face. I knew he wasn't going to be found. That was only a few days ago. We looked for him and came up with nothing. No foot tracks, no signs of struggle, absolutely nothing. It was 7 days later, a group of people found him near where he had disappeared that night. Well, they found what was left of him.
I've been camping for the past few weeks with a few of my friends. We're in a nice, secluded campground on the side of a mountain, filled with forests and a few remote lakes. It's quiet, peaceful, and honestly one of my favorite places in the country. It's not a well-known campground about 15 minutes outside of Pittsfield, Massachusetts, right in the heart of the Berkshires, so it's still close to town and everything we need while still being remote and private. I'm including this so you know how normal this place is. It's beautiful. Families come out here often to camp. I've been coming here since I was 8 with my family, and we've never had anything bad happen here. Until now, that is. I'm a 19-year-old girl, and a few of my friends and I decided last weekend we wanted to go on a camping trip since we're all back from college for the summer and we've missed each other. There's 6 of us overall. Me, Hannah, Tyler, Jacob, Aileen, Ben, and Yona. The names aren't real, obviously, because I want to keep our anonymity. We're not totally sure what to do about all of this. So we've been here for 3 days. We got unpacked, set up our tents and campfire. We spent the next 2 days messing around and enjoying ourselves, swimming in the lakes, talking around the campfire, and hiking on the trails. We have 2 more days here, and today we decided we would go exploring off-trail to see what's around. There's not really a danger of getting lost or anything because there's a big fence surrounding the campground and separates it from the national park. We figured we would take a map, keep track of where we were with Tyler's fancy GPS he got for geocaching or whatever. Ben had a stomachache from some expired granola bars and decided he was going to wait for us back at the campsite. We packed our backpacks with plenty of water, snacks, and emergency supplies, tied our shoes, locked up our stuff, said bye to Ben, and headed out from a smaller trail off the largest lake. For the first 2 hours, we didn't find anything cool or interesting as we trekked deeper into the wilderness. We found some cool trees, a little den of some sort of small animal, a huge boulder we got a cool picture on top of, and a little cave near the boulder that wasn't very interesting. As we got deeper into the woods, Aileen got a little spooked after she thought she heard someone calling her name. We all thought she was being ridiculous, as there are 5 of us out here, there's bound to be echoes off the trees and shit. She eventually dropped it and left it off. Tyler wandered off when we stopped for a snack, and a few minutes later came running back and told us he saw someone running around the woods. We all thought he was messing with us and fucked with him for it. It was funny and he brushed it off. We heard a couple of distant bells, which was a little weird, but we figured someone had a dog out here. About 3 p.m. we finally found something interesting. We found these cool structures that were made out of sticks and stretched into circles, like 2 to 3 feet in diameter, on the ground and hanging from trees. We also found a few nest things around the base of trees, like the sticks and branches had fallen in a circle pattern on the ground. Aileen, of course, was freaked out and wanted to go back, but Jacob and Tyler had found some wood and stone steps carved into the ground like they do for some hiking trails on a hill nearby. We also found some old wood railing, like what you find next to inclined trails. We figured it was part of an old hiking trail, and Aileen decided the weird stick things were from people who had found the old hiking trail. We agreed, even though we weren't sure. We kept going and eventually found the best and worst part of this trek. We found an old abandoned shed. I apologize for not having a real picture of it, but we didn't bring our phones. Only our satellite phone, we're not stupid. And my little Polaroid didn't have any more film. It was about 10 by 15 feet, so pretty big for a shed, but not big enough to be a house. Miles from anything and relatively well maintained. It wasn't like a super old and decrepit ruin like we would expect to find. I guess it was part of the old abandoned trail. We were so excited we had found something cool and immediately went around to see what was inside. We found it was locked from the inside and the windows were nailed shut. Yona found one of the 3 windows only had 1 nail and it was sticking halfway out, so we pried the nail out and Tyler climbed inside to let us in. He clambered around inside, then unlocked the door with a bit of effort. The door swung open and he beamed at us, proud of his work. We all clapped him on the back and came inside with him. It smelled terrible in there. A mix of rust, dead leaves, and something sour. We looked around and the boys turned their flashlights on since the windows didn't provide a lot of light. Inside there was a gross wooden chair, a pile of dusty and nasty looking blankets, a wooden table that was turned on its side, a few small bones we thought were from animals, and tons of leaves and dirt on the ground. There were handprints and footprints everywhere, and probably a couple of needles, so we definitely thought some hobo had been sleeping here. Tyler disagreed and thought some sort of cryptid had made a nest here. Eileen punched him and left the shed, and of course we ripped into him for being a dick. He said he was serious and said the bones and how it was locked are creepy as hell. He said all of the stick sculptures and shit were weird and not something a person would do. He wasn't afraid at all and said since we're on the grounds of a well-known and popular campground, and how it backs up into a national park are all signs of something living here. He then changed his mind about it being a cryptid and decided it was probably some creep trying to be weird and scare anyone who would happen to stumble across. We continued to explore, still calling Tyler an asshole and joking around and harassing him to lighten the mood. We sifted through the blankets and leaves and found a few half-burned candles, a used-up emergency flare, and a few burnt matches. Then I found the notebook. It was one of those little mini composition notebooks you can find in office supply aisles. It was dirty and scuffed and had frantic writing written inside. I called out to my friends and we started going through it. It was freaky as hell and read like a diary from a horror movie or something. We all got super freaked out and Jacob threw it at me to take back to camp with us. We didn't feel safe going through it there. So we all got the hell out of there. We trekked the 3+ hours back to our campsite, visited the bathrooms, and went back to hang out some more. It was about 8 p.m. when we all settled back in our camp for dinner. Ben had gone into town and gotten some food for us, so we quickly forgot about our adventure and enjoyed the rest of the night. Which is where we are now. It's about 10 p.m. We're all sitting around the campfire. I brought my laptop to go through the pictures we had and thought I would try and transcribe the notebook so everyone could read it at once, and then we could talk about it. So here goes. I've added some punctuation, fixed the grammar so it's more comprehensible.
My name's Cassie. I'm 14 and camping with my family at Cinder Pines. There are 5 of us, me, Mom, and Dad, Levi, 11, and Daisy, 6. We've been here for 5 days, I think. I lost all of them yesterday. I don't know what to do. I don't know if anyone will find us. I don't know where I am or where to go. I'm so scared. I don't know what to do. If someone finds us, you have to know what happened. We got here 5 days ago. It was fun. We set up our tents, went swimming, hiked, and had fun. It was supposed to be a fun summer trip, just the family. We went exploring in the woods 2 days ago. Dad knows this campground really well. and wanted to try some off-trail hiking. We brought water, we brought food. It was fine. It was fun. We were out for a while. We found these weird stick spirals everywhere, sticks around the trees. Then we found footprints. Then we heard sticks cracking out of sight. Levi touched one of the spirals and got a rash. A few minutes later, we saw an old cabin in the distance, but decided not to check it out in case it was dangerous. We went back to camp. It got really, really dark out, and we couldn't see the stars or the moon. Dad said it wasn't supposed to storm. We went to bed. We heard footsteps outside, but Mom and Dad didn't see anyone. Levi's rash got worse, and Mom put ointment on it. The footsteps lasted all night. I thought I heard some breathing, too. The rest couldn't hear it. A few times, there were bells, just little short rings, like a dog bell or something. I went out to pee late that night. I saw a shape in the woods. I was so scared. It looked like a person in a hoodie. I told my mom and Dad went out with a flashlight, but didn't see anything. They said we could leave in the morning. The night lasted so long, none of us slept. The sun finally came up and we packed our stuff. There were footprints all over the camp, in the gravel and the dirt. There were more stick spirals. Daisy started to cry, and Mom put her in the car. It was foggy out, like it usually is in the morning. The sky was overcast. We took a while to pack up. Levi noticed we couldn't hear any birds or cicadas. Everything felt muffled. We packed up. Dad left to go down the road to check out. He was gone for hours. Mom started to get scared. We tried calling the office, but got a busy signal. Daisy was crying. Levi and me went to the lake a few feet away. We sat there for a few minutes. We said how weird this was, and we just wanted to go home. We wondered where Dad was. It got cold, so we went back to the car to get jackets. Mom and Daisy were gone. Mom's phone was in her seat. There was no service. Levi started to cry. We yelled and yelled for Mom and Dad and Daisy. There was no answer at all. No echoes, no birds or bugs, no wind. I think my ears were ringing. It sounded like bells again. I don't know if it was my head or just super faint. It was getting dimmer out. I looked at my phone to see what time it was and tried to call my mom and dad. It was 8 p.m. We had been yelling for my mom and my sister for 4 hours, or we had been at the lake a long time. I started to cry too. I was so scared, but I tried to keep myself together for Levi. We sat in the car, ate some food, and tried over and over to call my mom, my dad, and the office. We tried 911 too, but there was always that stupid, busy dial tone. I made us beds in the car, the sleeping bags, and told Levi we would try again tomorrow when the sun was up. Maybe there was a storm or something down the mountain. I heard footsteps again that night, all around the car, pacing and pacing. But when I looked, there was nothing there. I cried as quiet as I could and prayed to God that someone would find us. Around 2 a.m., the wind started to blow again. It smelled really bad outside, and the footsteps got louder. I gave Levi my headphones and made him play his music. There were sounds outside, like wailing, whistling, like nothing I have ever heard before. It sounded like whales underwater, but slow and far away. I told myself it was coyotes or something. The sun finally came up. When we got outside, it was freezing, but so humid. It smelled awful, like ozone and rust and sharp cheese and dead leaves and dirt. The fog was still everywhere. We couldn't see past the tree line only a few yards away. All the stuff I had put outside of the car for us to sleep was gone. There were footprints in the gravel and dirt again outside the car, and spirals were marked in the dust on the side of the car and in the dirt on the ground. Not just sticks anymore. I told Levi we were leaving. We put our jackets on and put some stuff in our backpacks. We started to walk down the path to walk the 2 miles to the entrance and the office. We walked and walked. Levi was crying. I was too scared to cry. I kept seeing someone out of the corner of my eye. I didn't tell Levi. We yelled for our mom and dad and Daisy. We yelled for help, that we were lost. No one heard us or said anything. It got foggier and foggier. We couldn't see 10 feet in front of us. We kept our eyes on the road and down. I tried to play road trip games to keep Levi occupied. At some point, our phones stopped working. They stayed at 2:17 p.m. They wouldn't unlock. The battery charge wouldn't change. We knew time had passed because we got thirsty and hungry, and we walked and walked and walked. God, fuck. I can't do this. I'm crying and crying and crying. I can't breathe. Fuck. We kept walking for so fucking long. I told Levi to stop and turn around because I had to pee. I went and took a couple steps back to him, and he was gone. He wasn't anywhere. His footsteps stopped where he was standing. I screamed and screamed for him. I looked everywhere, but I couldn't fucking find him. I lost it and just ran down the road, and I cried and ran to where I thought would be people. The road turned into woods again, and the fog started to clear just a few steps past the trees. I tried to look around, but it was just trees everywhere as far as I could possibly see. I had just taken a few steps into the trees, but it was just trees everywhere. Like I had been teleported. I just started walking again. It was starting to get dark. I was walking for hours. My feet hurt, and I know I had blisters. My back hurt, and my face is raw. It got darker. The sky turned purple like sunset behind the clouds. I heard sticks snapping again. The air was still cold and unbearably humid. It was dusk, and fuck. And fuck, I was just right back to where we were 2 days ago. The stick spirals, the bent trees. I saw the cabin again. This time I went to it and hoped this was some sort of crazy realistic nightmare or prank or just something. And this was familiar. The door was open and there was a table and chair inside. The leaves were everywhere and dirt and stuff. I locked the door, sat down, and got this notebook out of my backpack. I turned on my flashlight. There wasn't enough light inside. I don't know what to do, so I started writing. I had a few candles and a flare in my backpack, so I lit the candles. It never got any darker inside, but it's dark in here. I can hear footsteps again. I don't know if I'm scared anymore. I'm just tired, and I want my mom and my dad. It's not fair. Fuck, there's something outside. It put its fingers under the door. I can hear it walking. I hear the bell chiming. They're closer this time. My name is Cassandra Rupert. I am 14. My mom is Elaine Rupert. My dad is Kevin Rupert. And my brother is Levi Rupert. My sister is Daisy Rupert. We were camping at Cinder Pines on June 27th, 2019. Please send help.
The notes end there. I mentioned we found the used up flare and the candles in the shed. I think Casey lit them. We're leaving in the morning. It's almost 1 a.m. and everyone is terrified. Ben is gonna stay up and keep watch to keep us comfortable. We'll be handing all of this in to the Forest Service and the police in a few hours. This is not what I had planned for a camping trip. God, I hope this isn't real. I'm terrified for this family, for Cassie. I have a 14-year-old sister. I can't even imagine how scared she must be.
Hey kid.
I opened my eyes and there was a man sitting next to me. Unkempt beard, rancid breath, and unwashed clothes. Homeless, probably.
I don't have any change,
I said. He wasn't the first homeless person I'd seen on the subway, but he was the first to sit so close to me. Probably high, I thought. I looked around the car. The man and I were the only ones inside. Not surprising, it was pretty late at night. The man chuckled. His teeth were brown.
I don't want change.
Then what?
I got a question.
Look, pal, I've had a long day, so I think I'll pass.
You sure?
He sounded like I just turned down the last donut in the box. I'm sure. To make my point clear, I put my earphones in. Not bothering to play any music, I leaned my head back and shut my eyes again. The train stopped at 2 more stations. I didn't open my eyes, but I didn't hear anyone get in the car, and I could still feel the homeless man sitting next to me. 1 more stop, and I'd be home.
Hey.
The homeless man said. I ignored him.
Hey.
He said again. I pulled out one of my earphones. When I opened my eyes, I saw that he was still sitting next to me, but I almost jumped out of my skin when I saw 2 other people were in the car. A woman in her late 30s and a little girl with pigtails was sitting across from me. The woman, who I assumed was the girl's mother, was reading a magazine with a bored disinterest. The girl was sucking on a sucker, cherry-flavored judging by the red smear around her mouth. Her blue eyes were fixed on me. I hadn't heard the 2 come into the car. Weird, I thought. Must have dozed off and missed it.
Hey,
the homeless man said, drawing my attention away from the little girl's eyes. What? I said.
You want to hear my question?
No, I said. Would you leave me be?
Suit yourself.
He shrugged. I scowled. The guy was really starting to annoy me. I made a show putting my earphones back in and playing my music just loud enough to drown the guy out. The little girl was still staring at me intently. We came to another stop and I started to drift off. Then about 10 minutes later, I felt someone shove my shoulder. My annoyance was brimming over into anger, and I sat up to tell the guy off. There were 4 more people in the train. I hadn't heard him get on the train either, but I'd had my music blasting pretty loud. Still, something didn't feel right. The little girl was still staring at me. Her cherry sucker and red-smeared lips twitched slightly. Her blue eyes had a strange depth. It seemed if I stared too long, I might forget to breathe. It was a ridiculous thought. I knew this, and I scoffed at the idea. But there was a little voice in the back of my head, a worm of doubt. The homeless man waved his gloved hand in front of my face. I actually did jump and tore my eyes from the little girl. What? I snapped.
Do you want to hear my question now?
Fine. What is your question? The man bared his rotted teeth in a grin and leaned in and said in a conspirator's whisper,
Do you believe in monsters?
Do I what? No, of course I don't. Are you high? The man chuckled.
Oh, skeptic.
His breath was really terrible. Look, I'm really not in the mood to talk, so...
So you don't believe in monsters? What about ghosts? Ghouls? Angels? Demons? God? The devil?
Do you have a point? I asked. I wasn't ready to talk about my spirituality, or lack thereof, to a hobo who was, in all probability, tripping angel dust.
The thing about monsters is that they're nearly perfect humans. I mean, ghosts are stuck to one place. Ghouls hunt alone. Monsters, though, they're like wolves. They have a hierarchy. They're organized. But do you know what makes them most dangerous?
Before I could answer, he continued.
They hunt in packs. They set up traps. Their prey seldom know what's happening until it's too late. But they don't kill their prey straight off. Oh no. That'd be too easy. They toy with them first. Get their scent. Monsters love the chase, see?
Where are you going with this? I said. I wanted to sound angry, but the guy was starting to creep me out.
I just want to ask you one more question.
He said, nodding to the rest of the train.
How did these people get here?
The train was packed. Every seat was taken. Men and women of all ages filled the space, and every one of them were staring at me. The little girl with the pigtails and the red-smeared lips had her blue eyes fixed on me. The sucker that she held in her mouth made her cheek bulge on one side. The train was slowing down, arriving at my stop. How? The words left my lips in a breath. The train came to a stop, and the doors slid open. I felt the need to run, to push through the staring strangers and sprint home. Instead, I stood and calmly made my way to the door. As I walked past the little girl with the pigtails and the red-smeared lips, she pulled out her sucker and smiled at me. The sucker was blue. I wanted to smile back, but instead, I pushed through to the exit. I stepped out into the night air and sighed in relief as I watched the doors to the train slide shut. I watched as the train slid away on the tracks, eventually swallowed by the darkness of the night. I turned and walked home. The whole way I thought about the train ride. How did those people get on the train? Who was the homeless man and the little girl? Had I imagined it? Or did her teeth seem a little too pointed? I was ready to shake it all off. I was ready for my bed. I took the elevator up to my floor and tirelessly made my way down the hall to my apartment. Once the door was in sight, I noticed something strange. There was a piece of paper tacked to the wood of the door. A note scrawled in messy handwriting, with only 3 words written. Got your scent.
I can't say my name for my own protection, so for now, call me Researcher X. But what I can say is that I worked on a super soldier project for the government. Yeah, I know. Stereotypical. But I swear it's the truth. They called it Project Lovecraft. I don't know when it began, but I was transferred to it as a researcher after its beginning. It was in a bunker up beneath Area 51. Again, I know, stereotypical. But that's the beauty of it. Area 51's infamy makes it too obvious to use, therefore it's the perfect location. That's my thought process on it anyway. I'm getting off subject. I arrived there in 2001 and worked on it, and even now I continue to do so, and let me tell you, I have seen some fucked up shit. So I figured I should tell someone about it. Let someone know what we're doing here. It's wrong. Thus, this post. So let's start with some experiment reports, shall we? Hopefully they don't find this. That's how executions happen. Experiment log. Date, May 1st, 2001. Project, Lovecraft 247. Subject, Private First Class. Height, 6 foot. Weight, 140 pounds. Subject was fastened with a gurney with a 1.5-inch leather strap to both wrists and ankles. He was injected with a sample of serum Lovecraft 47B. Subject began to convulse for approximately 2.5 minutes. After the end of convulsions, Private began to gain muscle mass exponentially. Blood began to come from his eyes, and at the point of his muscle mass reaching approximately 75% of its original size, Subject's heart and eyes exploded, killing him instantly. Researcher notes, this test was promising. The subject's muscle mass growth was a welcome improvement over previous testing. Experiment log. Date, June 15th, 2001. Project, Lovecraft 287. Subject, Sergeant. Height, 5 foot 11. Weight, 210 pounds. Subject, per own request, was placed in a 5x5 holding cell made of 10-inch bulletproof glass immediately after injection with sample of serum Lovecraft 59A. Approximately 45 seconds after, subject began convulsions, with amounts of blood and digestive fluids being vomited during these convulsions. Subject muscle growth rapidly increased by a measure of 15%. Convulsions ceased after 2 minutes, after which subject let out a seemingly rabid and feral scream. Subject struck the glass with a force of per square inch, fracturing the glass. 3 armed personnel entered the holding area and opened fire with M16 assault rifles, loaded with anti-personnel rounds. Subject is wounded but has no visible reaction. Subject attacks the guards, dismembering each. Subject begins to eat corpses. During consumption, subject appears to grow a 3rd arm and eye, as well as other appendages. The subject's heart explodes approximately 45 seconds after consumption of flesh begins. Researcher notes, the cannibalistic tendencies of the subject were not expected. However, the seeming imperviousness to bullets and increased strength, as well as extra limb growth, are promising. Future testing is needed. That's all I can share for now. I know it's not a lot. I can't leak too much right now. They might catch on if I do. Okay. I have to go for now, but I promise I'll return with more. And if I don't, they got me. Researcher X signing off. Hello everyone, this is Researcher X. In case you missed my original post, let me get you up to speed. I am a researcher on a government super soldier project known as Project Lovecraft. Now, seeing as my superiors haven't found the last post, and you guys think it's fiction, we're all safe for now. However, to the families of the poor souls we've performed this project on, I'm so sorry. I know we will all burn in hell for what we've done. Every one of us. From the head researchers down to the lowest of recruits. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent, aren't I? You guys are here for more experiments, aren't you? You sick fucks. But hey, I did promise, so here we go. Experiment log. Date, August 13th, 2001. Project, Lovecraft 387. Subject, pregnant female of years of age. Height, 5'6". Weight, 130 pounds. Subject, under the guise of an abortion, is injected into her womb with a sample of serum Lovecraft 87B. Approximately 35 seconds later, convulsions began. Subject's neck twisted at an angle of 372 degrees. Movement continued. 1.5 minutes after the beginning of convulsions, subject's upper torso ruptured. Previously early-term fetus, now seemingly fully grown, emerges from the chest cavity. The fetus hereby referenced to as Subject Lovecraft 2. And the mother is referred as Lovecraft 1. Lovecraft 1 proceeds to somehow still be capable of movement despite seemingly fatal wounding. 3 arm-like appendages grow from her sides, and her jaw extends 3 inches from her skull. Lovecraft 2 has 5 eyes and numerous deformities. Subjects struck the reinforced walls surrounding them for approximately 5 minutes before they expire. At this point, Subject Lovecraft 1's internal organs liquefied, and Lovecraft 2 expired at the same point as the mother. Autopsy report. Subject Lovecraft 2, despite not being full term, weighed 47 pounds, 7 ounces. It also lacked a heart, as well as a digestive tract. Additionally, Lovecraft 2 had several bones not found in humans, and 3-inch fang-like teeth. Researcher notes showed the normal feral behavior of previous subjects. The lack of a digestive tract and heart in Subject Lovecraft 2 suggests an adaptiveness due to previous subjects' hearts exploding. Also, the growth of additional appendages without cannibalistic tendencies is very promising indeed. It is still undetermined how the mother lived as long as she did, considering her injuries. Experiment log. Date, September 13th, 2001. Project, Lovecraft 415. Subject, corpse of victim from World Trade Center attack. Cause of death, death upon impact after leaping from World Trade Center 1 on September 11th. Height, unavailable due to cause of death. Weight, unavailable. Subject was placed onto a standard autopsy table and injected with serum Lovecraft 89A. Approximately 5 minutes after initial exposure, subject began to reanimate. Subject stood despite multiple bone fractures in his skeleton, especially leg fractures. Subject regurgitates its heart. It proceeds to consume the organ, growing a second mouth in its neck region, complete with teeth. Upon seeing researchers looking on from behind protective glass, it lunges. It struck on the glass, managing to break it, and Dr. was grabbed and pulled through. Using its second mouth, subject sprayed digestive fluids on the doctor. It then proceeded to rip out the esophagus and consume it. After consumption of the doctor's flesh, it grew a tendril-like appendage out of its back. Personnel armed with explosive round ammunition and 12-gauge shotgun entered and terminated the subject after several rounds. Researcher notes: while the death of a colleague is never a good thing, the reanimation of the dead tissue and lack of death before personnel intervention does suggest a possible military application. The cannibalism and growth of appendages is still a side effect of the Lovecraft serum we don't fully understand. Perhaps we could make use of it as a biological weapon. Following the reanimation of Dr. Spotty, any attempt to use Lovecraft 89A as a bioweapon, under any circumstances, will be denied due to risk of contagion. So these were more graphic. Told you I'd seen some shit. So with that, let me know if you want more, and barring they don't find out who I am, I'll post more. Until then, I've been Researcher X, bringing you the reports on Project Lovecraft. Upon the request of Incredible Platypus, I did some digging and found the security footage of the incident of Dr. reanimating. Below is my best try at a transcription, I guess. Date: September 14th, 2001. Time: 0100 hours. Dr. Spotty was laid on an autopsy table, having been dissected for internal effects of the digestive fluids they were coated in by hostile Lovecraft subject. At approximately the half-hour mark, with several major organs missing, sits up on the table. A nearby researcher doesn't see this. Nearby referred to as 89A1, punctures the researcher's upper torso from behind with a single strike. 89A1's arm is visibly all the way through the researcher. The next 35 minutes of footage consists of 89A1 eating the flesh of the researcher's corpse before it too reanimates, hereby referring to as 89A2. At the point of 89A2's reanimation, 89A1 has already begun previous side effect of growth of appendages and orifices in its body. At 0200 hours, 2 armed personnel enter the room on patrol. 89A1 and 89A2 attack them. They kill one member of the patrol, but the other kills 89A2 before 89A1 kills the personnel. 10 minutes later, a squad of armed personnel arrive. Although they suffer casualties, they put down all instances of 89A. Dead members' bodies were incinerated immediately, along with all instances of 89A reanimated corpses. So yeah, may have accidentally made zombies. We're definitely going to hell.
So recently I inherited a plot of land from a relative. It wasn't much, but it did have a cabin on the property. So I said what the hell and decided to go there. Spend my weekend in the wilderness. Now, I'm sure you've heard stories like that hundreds of times. Some schmuck goes to a cabin in the woods and bad things happen. Well, this isn't one of those stories. In fact, besides the place being a bit creepy, I swear it looked like the cabin from the Evil Dead. Nothing of note happened there. Well, except for the cellar. See, I was cleaning up the place when I found a little trap door. Naturally, I'm not the superstitious type, so I said fuck it, and opened the thing up. It smelled of rot and mildew. I had no idea what had been living down there, but there were animal droppings everywhere. I shined my flashlight around a bit, looking for any kind of light switch. I didn't find one. There was dusty furniture and a lot of mice. They skittered away into the dark corners of the room as my flashlight shined over them. Then something caught my eye. On the table in the corner of the room, covered in what I could only assume was decades of dust, was a small book, bound in leather. Careful not to stumble in the darkness, I made my way over, grabbed it, and went back upstairs. The journal was dated 1843, and it was signed by someone named Abigail Ashlock. Now, the reason I'm telling you all this is because I think something bad happened here. Her journal reads as follows.
August 15th, 1843. Papa went out to town today. He should return in 3 days. Mama doesn't think it's very ladylike for a girl to know how to write, but learning's important. My school teacher told us so. Anyway, Papa said he would bring me and John a treat back from town if we promised to be good for Mama and do any chores we needed to around the house. I saw the man from the forest again today. He told me to stay away from the well, said that's where the Shadow Man lives. August 19th, 1843. Papa still hasn't come back. Mama's getting worried. He's never been gone this long. John's come down with a fever. Mama hasn't slept in 2 days. She said if Papa doesn't come back in 2 days, she's gonna take John to town to see Doc Morgan. I'm really worried about him. I went to get him some water from the well, but it was red. So I had to get it from the creek. I hope you'll be alright. August 20th, 1843. Papa came back last night, told us not to go outside. I've never seen anybody so scared, like the devil was outside our door. Mama says John has to go to town, but Papa won't budge. Said there's something out there, and that we can't go out until the sun's up. I hear something outside. It's scratching on the walls of our house. August 28th, 1843. The sun still hasn't come up. It's been dark out for a week now. Mama and Papa are fighting about whether or not to take John to town. Papa says she can't, but she's going tomorrow if tomorrow ever comes. The man from the forest was in my room tonight. Said the Shadow Man got out from the well, and that's why the sun don't come up anymore. He told me to pray the Lord my soul to take, or I might lose it. August 31st, 1843. Mama went out last night and took John. Papa told me to go to the cellar. I heard shooting. Papa's shotgun. I'm hearing heavy walking above me, like a bear, bigger. I'm scared. September 2nd, 1843. The sun came up. I saw it through the floorboards. I'm so hungry. I came up to look for Mama, Papa, and John. Oh God. Something tore Papa up bad. I think that was Papa. It's hard to tell since his head's gone. I still haven't found Mama or John. I think the Shadow Man got him. It's night now, and the Shadow Man's back. I am hiding in the cellar. I saw him, though, before I came down here. He's as black as pitch. He's the size of a man, with bright red eyes like fire. He never stops moving, like water or something like that. He's awfully hungry. I can hear him eating Papa now. September 1843. He got in. He knows I'm here.
That's where it ends. I should mention that I didn't find any evidence besides the journal of the Ashlock family. There was also a symbol drawn on the back cover that I put with this. I'm not sure what it means. Can someone help me figure this out? So I did some research. The Morse roughly translates to, and just like that, I'm not going back to that cabin anytime soon. Fuck that.